BYD's CEO just said something on record that should be the biggest story in the car industry this year. Almost nobody covered it. You'd assume it's about horsepower. It's not. It's a $45,000 sedan that goes 1,600 kilometers, 1,000 miles, on one tank and one charge. And it still outturns a hatchback. It's not a concept. It's shipping right now. BYD's CEO just told the industry, on record, the old playbook is dead. By the end of this video, you'll know why every legacy automaker should be worried. Let's get into it. A battery company wearing a car company's clothes. Here's something most people don't know about BYD, and it's the key to everything else in this video. BYD didn't start as a car company. They started in 1995, making rechargeable batteries for cell phones and electronics. Think about that for a second. While Toyota and Volkswagen were spending 100 years perfecting the internal combustion engine, BYD was spending 30 years becoming one of the best battery makers on Earth. They didn't stumble into electric vehicles. They walked in through the back door already holding the one piece of technology every other automaker on the planet has to buy from someone else. That difference matters more than it sounds like. Most car companies, and I mean the big legacy names you grew up trusting, don't actually make their own batteries, their own motors, or their own chips. They buy them from suppliers. Every supplier takes a cut. Every middleman adds cost. By the time a battery pack, a motor, and a set of semiconductors reach a Ford or a BMW assembly line, there's already a stack of profit margins baked into the price before the car is even built. BYD skips almost all of that. They build the batteries, they build the motors, they build a huge chunk of their own semiconductors. When you don't have to pay somebody else's profit margin on every single component, you can afford to put more technology into a car and still make money. That's not a slogan. That's math. And it's the reason a $45,000 BYD sedan can carry equipment that a European luxury brand would put behind a $15,000 options package. The car at the center of this story is built on a brand new platform, one that folds the battery, the motors, the suspension, the cooling system, and the driver assistance software into a single unit designed together from day one. Most competitors still bolt these systems together after the fact, sourced from 4 or 5 different suppliers, hoping they all talk to each other nicely. BYD designed the whole thing as one system. And the size of it is no joke either. This sedan stretches over 5 meters long, the same footprint as a BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes EQE. So before we even get to the specs, understand what you're looking at. This isn't a budget car that happens to be big. This is a full-size luxury flagship built by a company that has spent 30 years mastering the one part of the car that everybody else still has to buy secondhand. And that's just the foundation. What BYD built on top of it is where things start to get genuinely uncomfortable for the old guard. The suspension that should cost twice as much. Picture the German engineer from earlier still standing at that lift. He's about to have a much worse day. For decades, air suspension has been one of the crown jewels of the luxury car business. It's the kind of feature you'd find on a top-trim S-Class or a fully loaded Range Rover, something that costs thousands of dollars as an add-on, if it's even available at all on a lower trim. BYD put a closed-chamber air suspension system on this sedan as standard equipment, not an upgrade. Standard, and it's not a basic system that just raises and lowers the car. This is a fully active suspension, constantly reading the road and adjusting stiffness and damping independently at each wheel, in real time. Here's the part that should genuinely worry every performance engineer in Stuttgart. There's an 8-megapixel camera hidden behind the front bumper, scanning the road up to 15 meters ahead with a wide field of view. Before your front tire ever touches a pothole or a rough patch of pavement, the onboard computer has already calculated exactly how stiff or soft each wheel needs to be, and it's already sent those instructions to the suspension in milliseconds. The car is reacting to the road before you feel it. That's the kind of ride quality that used to require a 6-figure price tag. BYD put it in a car that costs less than half that. Then there's the rear-wheel steering, and this is where it gets almost absurd. At low speeds, the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction from the front wheels. That effectively shortens the wheelbase and lets the car spin through a much tighter turning circle. This 5-meter luxury sedan has a turning radius of just 4.95 meters. For comparison, a Volkswagen Golf, a small hatchback more than a meter shorter, needs about 5.4 meters to make the same turn. Let that sink in. A car the size of a BMW 5 Series can physically turn around in a smaller space than a Golf. At higher speeds, those same rear wheels turn in the same direction as the fronts, which makes lane changes and highway maneuvers feel steadier and more planted. If you're an engineer at a legacy brand, this is the nightmare scenario. Your entire pricing strategy has been built around telling customers that air suspension and rear wheel steering are premium, top trim only features. Then, a $45,000 car from China shows up with both of them as base equipment, and suddenly, your pricing sheet doesn't make sense anymore. But suspension is just the setup. What's under the hood, or rather under the floor, is where this car really starts throwing punches. Supercar numbers, family sedan practicality. There's an unspoken rule in the auto industry. If you want serious speed, you pay serious money. If you want a car that hits 60 miles an hour in under 4 seconds, you're usually looking at a dedicated sports car north of $80,000. The top all-wheel drive version of this BYD sedan uses dual motors that combine for roughly 510 kilowatts of power. That's about 684 horsepower, and over 800 Newton meters of torque. It sprints from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.3 seconds. For context, a BMW M3, a car built from the ground up for pure performance, does that same sprint in about 3.5 seconds. This 5-seat family sedan, with massaging seats and acoustic glass, is faster than a purpose-built performance icon. And the smart driving system on board is just as serious. BYD calls it their Advanced Driver Assistance Suite, and it's not some basic camera-only setup that panics in bad weather. We're talking one high-resolution LiDAR unit, 12 ultrasonic radars, 5 high-definition cameras, and 3 millimeter wave radars, all feeding a single computer a full 360-degree picture of the world around the car. Rain, fog, night driving, all of it. Here's the detail that actually separates this system from a lot of its rivals. Most driver assist systems are built to hand control back to you the moment they hit a situation they can't handle. If you don't respond fast enough, a lot of them just shut off and leave you to it. This system does something different. If it runs into a scenario it can't solve and you don't take over, it calculates the safest possible path on its own and brings the car to a controlled stop. It doesn't give up. It takes responsibility. And structurally, this thing is built like a vault. Over 86% of the body is high-strength steel and aluminum alloy. The critical impact zones, the A pillars and B pillars, use ultra-high-strength hot-formed steel rated well beyond what most mainstream sedans use. BYD also integrates the top of the battery pack directly into the car's structural frame, which stiffens the whole chassis and helps push crash forces away from the passenger cabin. They didn't just claim the battery was safe either. They crushed it, dropped it, soaked it, burned it, and deliberately short-circuited it in testing. No fires, no thermal runaway, nothing. And on top of all of that, 11 airbags come standard, a number a lot of competitors reserve for their most expensive trims. Add in acoustic glass that keeps the cabin whisper quiet at highway speed, anti-motion sickness tech that adjusts airflow, lighting, and sound to reduce nausea for passengers, and front massaging seats that plenty of rivals still charge extra for. And you start to see a pattern. Every single feature that used to be a luxury upsell just became the starting point. But none of this, the speed, the safety, the comfort, matters if the car can't actually get you where you're going. And that brings us to the problem that's been holding electric vehicles back in America for a decade. Now, if you're starting to see why this car is causing so much noise in the industry, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you don't miss what BYD does next, because this next part is the real reason people are calling the sedan a warning shot. Killing range anxiety for good. Let's be honest about what actually stops people from buying an EV. It's not the daily commute. Most people drive less than 50 kilometers a day, and pretty much any electric car on the market can handle that without breaking a sweat. It's the unexpected trip. What happens when you need to drive across 3 states to see family for Thanksgiving? What happens when the charger at your highway rest stop is broken or there's a 40-minute line? Outside major cities, public charging in the U.S. is still a coin flip, and that uncertainty is enough to keep millions of buyers stuck with gas. BYD's answer is to offer this sedan in 2 versions, a pure electric model and a plug-in hybrid. And the hybrid is where things get genuinely wild. The hybrid version carries a massive 45.36 kilowatt-hour battery. On battery power alone, before the gas engine ever turns on, this car can travel up to 400 kilometers, roughly 250 miles. The average driver covers 30 to 40 kilometers a day. That means you could go over a week, sometimes closer to 2, running purely on electricity without burning a drop of gasoline. For almost all of your day-to-day driving, this car behaves exactly like a full EV. Plug it in at home, charge overnight, drive all week on electrons. But when Friday hits and you need to drive cross-country, you don't have to plan your route around charging stations at all. A full tank of gas combined with a full battery gives you a total range of 1,660 kilometers. That's over 1,000 miles. That's enough to drive from Paris to Rome without stopping once for fuel or a charge. Or, if you want an American comparison, that's enough to get you from Chicago to Denver and most of the way back on a single fill-up and a single charge. And even if you somehow drain the battery completely and run purely on the gas engine, the hybrid system is so efficient it only burns about 3.6 liters per 100 kilometers. That's better fuel economy than plenty of small economy cars less than half this sedan size. Think about what that actually does to the entire EV versus gas argument. You no longer have to choose between an electric car that's fantastic around town but stressful on road trips and a gas car that's easy for long hauls but wasteful every single day. This is both. It's an electric car that happens to carry its own backup generator for the rare weekend you need to go the distance. That's a genuine solution to the single biggest objection keeping American buyers on the fence about going electric. And BYD didn't stop there, because for the buyers who want to go fully electric, no gas engine at all, BYD found a way to make range anxiety a non-issue there too. Charging faster than you can pump gas. Most electric vehicles on the road today run on a 400-volt electrical system. That's been the industry standard for years, and it puts a hard ceiling on how fast you can charge. Think of it like filling a swimming pool through a garden hose. You can crank up the water pressure a little, but eventually the hose itself is the bottleneck. To go faster, you need a bigger hose. In electrical terms, that means higher voltage. The pure electric version of this sedan runs on a true 800-volt system, the same basic approach Porsche uses on the Taycan and Hyundai uses on the Ioniq 5. But BYD didn't stop at just bumping the voltage. They engineered the entire battery pack, the cooling system, and the charging controller to handle extremely high charging currents without overheating or degrading over time. Here's what that means in the real world. You pull into a highway rest stop with your battery at 10%. You plug in exactly 5 minutes, about the time it takes to walk in, grab a coffee, and walk back to the car. You've added 400 kilometers of range. Wait the full 9 minutes and your battery goes from 10% all the way to 97%. You will spend less time plugged into a wall than the guy next to you spends standing at a gas pump. Now compare that to the competition. A base Volkswagen ID.7 or a BMW i4, both running standard 400-volt systems, need close to 30 minutes just to hit 80%, and the charging speed often slows to a crawl after the halfway point. The gap between 400-volt and 800-volt charging isn't a minor improvement. It's a completely different category, and it holds up in weather that usually wrecks EV charging speeds. In extreme cold, battery chemistry changes, and charging can slow dramatically. Some EVs that charge in 30 minutes at room temperature take over an hour at -20 degrees Celsius. BYD's thermal management system actively heats or cools the battery to keep it in its ideal range no matter what's happening outside. Even at minus 30 degrees, charging this sedan takes only about 3 minutes longer than it does on a warm day. That's not a lab number pulled from a press release. That's the difference between a 9-minute stop and a 45-minute stop in the middle of a January road trip. And it's exactly why engineers in Germany and Detroit are calling this platform a strategic weapon instead of just another sedan. The old playbook just broke. So step back for a second, because this is bigger than one impressive car. This is a warning about how the entire industry works. For decades, European and American automakers have run on an upselling business model. You walk into a showroom, you see an advertised base price, and then the options list quietly does the rest. Want air suspension? That's a $5,000 package. Want rear-wheel steering? Add another $3,000. Want the advanced driver assistance suite? That might be a monthly subscription now. By the time you check every box, you're paying 50% more than the number that got you in the door. That system worked for decades because there was no alternative. If you wanted a premium sedan with cutting-edge technology, a handful of legacy brands were the only game in town, and they set the price. Nobody else had the manufacturing depth to match them. BYD breaks that model, not by simply undercutting on price, but by redefining what the base price includes. Because they build their own batteries, motors, and semiconductors, they skip the supplier markups baked into every other automaker's pricing. Features that used to be profit centers just became standard equipment. Legacy automakers do have options here, but none of them are painless. They could try to match BYD feature for feature, but that means eating into the profit margins their entire pricing structure depends on. They could try to build their own batteries and components in-house, but that takes years and billions of dollars that shareholders may not want to wait for. Or they could lean on tariffs and trade barriers, which might buy time, but ultimately just raises prices for their own customers while the technology gap keeps growing underneath them. To be fair, BYD isn't walking into the American and European markets with everything already solved. Their brand doesn't carry the prestige of a BMW or a Mercedes yet, at least not in the West. Their dealer and service networks here are still young. Those aren't small concerns. A car is a decade-long relationship for most owners, and people want to know they can get it serviced without a headache. But these are problems of presence, not problems of engineering. They're the kind of thing that time and investment can fix. And BYD already sells vehicles in over 100 countries, expanding its Western footprint faster than most industry analysts predicted just a few years ago. So let's go back to that BMW engineer we started with, standing at the lift, staring underneath a $45,000 sedan from a company he probably dismissed a few years ago as just another Chinese EV maker. He's not looking at a lucky one-off. He's looking at the result of 30 years of battery expertise, poured into a platform where the suspension, the motors, the safety systems, and the range solution were all designed to work together from day one. A car that turns tighter than a hatchback, accelerates harder than an M3, stops itself if the driver can't, and can cross the country on a single tank and charge combo without ever touching a fast charger for more than a coffee break. That's not just a great car. That's a message. The features that used to define luxury, the things automakers used to lock behind a $20,000 options list, just became the starting point. And that starting point is heading west faster than most people in Detroit or Munich are ready to admit. So here's the real question worth sitting with. Do you think the legacy automakers, the BMWs, the Fords, the Mercedes-Benzes of the world, can actually restructure their pricing and their engineering fast enough to compete with this? Or has BYD already opened up a gap that's too wide to close? I want to hear your take. Drop it in the comments. And if you're someone who's actually cross-shopped a BYD against a traditional luxury brand, I especially want to hear how that experience went for you. If this breakdown helped you understand why this car has the entire industry talking, do me a solid, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you catch the next one the moment it drops. This channel lives and dies on people like you sticking around for stories like this one. We've got more of these industry deep dives coming because the car world is changing faster right now than it has in decades, and Motors In is going to be right here breaking down exactly what it means for you, the driver. So if you want to stay ahead of what's coming next, this is the place to be. Thanks for riding along on this one. I'll see you in the next video.